All right.
By the way,
Folks,
hang on a minute, Steve. For the benefit of everyone on board, if you need to chime in with a comment or with a question, the space bar acts as a push to talk button. So press the space bar, talk. When you finish, release it.
however, as we go through the presentations today, I've asked you to scribble your questions down on a piece of paper, and we'll go to questions at the end of the session. We've got a full hour's worth of stuff to go through today. And then after that, we'll open it up to questions and discussions. Those that need to leave can do so, and those that want to stay on and do the interactive part, that'll be great. We'll leave it open as long as we have people that want to discuss things. Okay, we have 4 presentations today. First is a short topic by Bruce Alcock on virtual rail fanning and modeling. The second, our vendor presentation for this month, is by Digitrax. Zana Ireland will be speaking on that. The third is another short topic, which is DCC layout wiring by John Wallis. And the fourth is our main topic, the 30-minute topic, which is an introduction to operations with an emphasis on N-scale situation. So those are our 4 presentations. I would like to tell you in advance that this is the last time that our format will include 2 short topics. Beginning in March, we will add a new topic, which is a layout tour, a virtual layout tour, or some type of a tour of individuals' layouts, and that will start on our March meeting, where we'll have a short topic, a vendor presentation, a layout tour, and then our main topic. And we're looking forward to seeing how those go. At the end of the meeting, Bruce will put up a short questionnaire that we'd like you to fill out. It just takes a couple of clicks of your mouse to fill it out and let us know what you think of the meeting, about the presentations. The other thing we'd like you to think about is we try to keep our schedule going in advance. In other words, March and April are all completely full. We've got it, everything planned, and all of the slots are filled. But in May, we have a short topic opening, and in June, we have a short topic opening. So if you have something you have an interest in, that you have some knowledge on and you'd like to share with the N-scale model railroading community, we would appreciate it if you let us know. Bruce, tell them how the contact is on that.
Okay. Yeah, just go ahead and send email to ZoomTRAK@nrail.org.
ZoomTRAK@nrail.org. And we are going to be working on the NRail website to get a place where you can click if you have a presentation you'd like to present, where you can contact us through the website. We don't have that up and running yet, but we will here shortly. So keep an eye on that. If you haven't used the NRail website, please do so. If you've never logged on and if you're a member of NRail and haven't logged on and filled out the information, please do that also. So without further ado, let's get this meeting underway with our first short topic, virtual rail fanning and modeling. Bruce, you're up.
Okay. Well, imagine that from your nice warm office, you could be sitting outside next to the railroad track watching trains going by, and not just in one particular location, but in fact, choosing several different locations. There's a program that's called Virtual Rail Fanning, and I'm going to bring this up now. And Virtual Rail Fan is basically webcams around the country next to train tracks, and we have trains out here in California. This is Santa Fe Junction over here in Kansas City, all the way down to Florida. The only place that, well, actually, New Mexico doesn't, or Arizona doesn't have any snow either. But in any case, Virtual Rail Fan gives you a gives you a view trackside of what's going on. Well, it's basically a website you go to, and they have a combination of both free and subscription. There are currently 34 webcams at 27 locations. Some of them have multiple webcams pointing, for example, north and south. The map down here shows you the all of the locations across the country. Each camera can be moderated. In some cases, there is chat. In some cases, there isn't. There are 225,000 subscribers so far, and there continue to be additional people signing up, and more people that sign up, the more cameras they can have. There's, as I said, they're both free and paid versions of that. 4 different packages they offer depending upon what you want. Allows the paid versions allow layouts, which means you can have more than one camera at once. The free ones are just basically one camera. Banner ads versus none, 90-minute DVR, and so forth. The website is virtualrailfan.com, and this is basically, the map here has all the locations on it. There are 4 packages available, and this is a sample of what the of a camera. And down here on the lower left, you have the ability to stop or return to the video.
Bruce, would you go back to the screen that shows the packages that are available?
Oh, well, there are 4 different packages. The
Yeah.
best thing to do is go on to virtualrailfan.com and look and see what they have available, okay?
Perfect.
I'm not going to go into any detail now, because there's plenty of information on there. There are also some free YouTube cams, and this is one. This is, if I'm not mistaken, Cajon. And down here are all of the free ones that they offer. Virtually everyone now has a YouTube version that is free, but again, it's only single. One of the nice things is the ability to stop the video. You can do a rewind. So if you see an engine come by and you say, I want to take a look and see what that engine, I want to get a better shot of that engine, you can do that. You do screenshots, and that's what we have, for example, back here. This is a screenshot, which you can save for reference, share with others. You can use it to get engine numbers, and certainly all of this is part of the modeling experience where what you're looking for is reference material. Okay, for operations activity, one of the things that the new operating method that they're using now has done is result in a lot more foreign power showing up on roads. For example, this is Norfolk Southern trackage. You will see a train here. I'm not sure whether this is actually a CN or a Norfolk Southern train, but the fact that you've got foreign power on here, the power no longer indicates who's running the train. So you will see a lot of mix of power, and that's the way today's operations are being run, which means that if, for example, you have a favorite paint scheme, but you're not modeling that road, there's no reason why you can't run that engine. In this case, we have a short line that's coming in. This is the Grand Elk Railroad, which runs up into Michigan and running down to Elkhart. Most of my pictures are taken from Elkhart, which happens to have about 100 trains a day. In this case, the Grand Elk Railroad, which is a short line, is running down with their power. You'll notice the XUP scheme, which now has WAMX on the side and on both of these engines. So if you want to model, for example, a short line, you can see that the short lines do run into Class 1 yards, and the track to that short line is just off here to the left. In this case, you have a CN train that's using CSX power as well as CN. There's a lot of they're doing a lot of run-through power right now, and you'll see more and more of that. PSR, Precision Scheduled Railroading, is the term for what all of the railroads have adopted. And basically what they're doing is they're scheduling trains, and they're scheduling trains to run point A to point B. And if it happens that they're on different railroads, the train will interchange and they won't even take the engines off. They'll keep running it through, especially on things like ethanol, coal, crude, and so forth. Freight cars. When you're modeling, you want to see what the prototype looks like. If you want to do some weathering, for example, you get the ability to do a screenshot and see what the cars look like. You may not want to do the graffiti, but certainly there are other features here. For example, on this hopper was Southern, and you can see that they kind of painted out and put new reporting marks over here on it. Over here on this brown boxcar, you'll notice that whatever logo was on here has been painted over. And of course, the mix of boxcars is such that they're different heights. Very often when we're modeling, we have all boxcars that are the same height because they're from the same manufacturer. And if you're trying to do a prototype train, you really want to get a mix of different boxcars. It's a problem if you're modeling the 60s or the 70s because there's no way we can take you back. But for modern equipment, you get a general idea of what it's like. And some of these cars have been around for a long, long time. The prototype actually runs pink equipment. These are well cars that were put out by TTX. I think they have Working for the Cure on the side right over here in the center car. So there are all kinds of special paint schemes that you can do. If you want to do something for your model railroad and you want pink cars, yep, there it is. There's the prototype. More on freight cars. One of the things that we used to see are intermodal trains that were exclusively intermodal. That's no longer true. We're seeing more and more mix of intermodal and mixed freight. And in this case, even though these cars are empty, right around the corner, there will be some loaded intermodal cars. And they're running a lot of empties also for various reasons. That balances the cars out. Believe it or not, one of the industry magazines was saying that the intermodal business is reaching its peak capacity right now. They can't handle more. The ports are full, they don't have any extra containers, and the railroads probably are the one thing that have the most additional capacity. So there's a lot of intermodal traffic that's being run. Freight car loads, examples of freight car loads. We all have depressed center flat cars on our railroad, but what do we do? Do we ever put loads on there? In this case, I believe these are boilers that are on here, and you'll notice the wood packing that's being used to protect some of the equipment. And then there are also, in this case, you can't really see it, but usually there are metal bars that are tying down the load. So the point being that by using virtual Railfan, you can see examples of what's being done in the prototype. Coal guns are not necessarily used just for coal anymore. They're very common for scrap cars when end of life, or when, actually it's not really end of life, when they're finished running on a particular line. With coal traffic going down, these cars are being used more and more for scrap metal, and you can see in here the loads with the scrap metal in them. Tractors, we all like tractors, and here you can put tractors on. This train has originated in Illinois and serviced the John Deere plant, and you'll see that the larger tractors are only 2 to a flat car with the tires in the center. these tires, if they were on the ends of the tractor, would extend beyond the end of the car. And the smaller tractors are actually 3 to a flat car. As we talked about before, mixed power, in this case you have, this probably is a Canadian Pacific train. It's got a standard Canadian Pacific engine, and this is the Canadian Army unit. Progress Rail. Progress Rail is a Caterpillar company, and seeing this being run, start doing some research and find out actually Caterpillar bought EMD, and Progress Rail is Caterpillar's division now for EMD engines, and they're running this, they're doing this testing of this engine around the Elkhart area. 2 trains in 1. Trains are a lot longer now than they used to be. 140 car trains are common, and what they basically do is they run 2 trains, and in this case you have a unit train in front with grain or potash or whatever it is, and then mid-train helpers, and then mixed freight and back here. So in some cases the operating practices are that they'll use pushers, in some cases mid-train units. We saw one the other day was only 10 cars from the rear, so the location varies. So using virtual railfan, you can basically railfan from the comfort of your home, and there's lots of action to be seen. There are something like 34 locations. Visit the site and try it out and see. In this case, we've got, again, the local up here waiting to come into the yard. You get ideas for prototype operations for cars, justification for mixing your road power, and basically it's a way to enjoy your railfanning. One other thing I just want to put up here, these are the railroad emergency numbers, and they are on the virtual railfan site, and this is probably something that we all should keep handy in case we ever see anything going wrong, so that we can call the railroads and say, hey, we just spotted something. So basically that's it. One of the things that I would suggest is if you do have questions at some point, what you probably want to do is go ahead and use the chat. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a chat capability. You can go ahead and use that.
Thank you, Bruce.
Steve?
We're going to move right along. We're about 1/4 now, so Zana Ireland with Digitrax is going to take on. We're going to hear about 10 minutes from Zana, I hope, and we're looking forward to it. So Zana, if you'll unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Zana Ireland. This is AJ Ireland, my partner in crime. We are the principals of Digitrax. We know almost everybody that's on this call, so that's a good thing. Welcome back to our conference room in our building. We finally moved back into the building after having to reconstruct after Hurricane Michael destroyed everything we had. And we are very pleased to be back. We are slowly but surely getting caught up on the backlog, which is still significant. But you know, having to rebuild from zero has taken 2 years, a little more than 2 years, and we're still working on it every day. And we thank you all for staying with us and continuing to support us. All of our employees love you and think about you every day as they build toys for you. So,
working equipment.
I know, they're not toys. We were asked to talk about the throttles, the new throttles. So AJ is going to do that. I'm going to turn the screen around, and he's got them all set up on a little board here so he can show you the differences between the vintage technology and the new hotness. So here we go. Can y'all see him? Okay, there you go.
Okay, we have on my left here, we have a UT4, it's a duplex actually. Here's a DD500 duplex. Both those sitting there just as references. This is the new product offerings we released in the last year. The DT602 came out back in June of last year, and UT6 came out in Thanksgiving, actually, so of last year. So basically, these are the two new technology throttles that supersede our prior units.
And we apologize for them not being out sooner, but there again, there was that pesky old hurricane.
Yeah.
All this engineering had been done before October of 2018 when we had the problem. So it's finally here, and we're glad it's here.
So basically, these are the new units. They all work together on the same system. So they'll work on a Chief, they'll work on this on a Evolution Extra Express. So basically, it's all part of the family of throttles. We have a lot of new capabilities with these two new throttles. Going to the whole issue of why it's taking us so long to get them out, it goes back to, if you look at this is the DT5 DCS52. We developed this and tooled this in 2017, and it was actually slated to release basically the week of the hurricane. We had some built up, we were ready to go, and then we were basically 3 miles, 4 miles from the eye wall of a Cat 5 hurricane, which tore up our building, our equipment, our inventory, and everything. So we were knocked back on our heels pretty good. We were blasted back to the Stone Age, and the local area is also devastated. It's absolutely amazing to be that close to a Cat 5. Luckily, nobody in our area immediately was killed. So basically, this was released actually in January of 2019, only like 3 months after the hurricane flattened us. We restarted production in another part of our building, and we released this guy. It's very well received. And you can see there's a family similarity with the keypad and the display, which actually carries over to the DT602. So in some ways, this is like a 602, but it also has a built-in command station. So this is something that's very popular, and it was sort of the entree to the new technology. And again, this was actually tooled, plastic tooled in 2017. And funnily enough, these two throttles are also tooled in 2017. So it's been a long time coming. We've basically lost 2 years almost. So you can see both these throttles are sitting here. They're both duplex, they're plugged in. They've got a power connection and a low connect connection. And you can have a look here. The power button on the 602 is flashing every 2 seconds or so, which tells me it's sleeping. Because it's on the network, it's actually sitting there waiting to do something. So I can wake it up by pressing any key. I just press that key. It just woke up. Now it's actually, if you, it may be hard to see from there, but basically it gives you a color screen, and we have a prompt line, a scrolling text help line here, which prompts you as to what you can do in the particular mode you're in. Right now, I would like to select, say, Loco 3, which is a common factory Loco. So Loco 3, Loco, that's it. It's pretty much very similar to all the key sequences on its predecessors. So there should be very little learning curve. You don't really need a manual with this because the screen prompts you. We have a lot of other stuff which is a lot easier to use on this. We obviously have 2 throttles, right and left. We have individual direction buttons. We have, with the 602, we have 6 soft keys, 3 soft keys on the bottom, 3 on the top, and they're context sensitive. They change as we change modes. This is just running a locomotive, and O3, I guess, on the left throttle. The right throttle is inactive, so there's O3 running. Now, we can change functions, obviously, numeric keys. We can go from 0 to 9 to 11 to 19 to 21 to 28 by just changing a few buttons. We can also go into other useful screens, which, for example, here, we can go into one of the, we call it the hamburger mode. And now we can go into a lot of hidden utility screens, a lot of setups and whatever. And we can, every time, if we're tired of being where we're at, we can hit the X button and we come back to the home screen. So this is, 20-second tour of the 602. And I think Chris covered this pretty good in his explanations.
The videos,
go ahead. The videos, yeah, those are on our website. This is the companion throttle. It's just a smaller version. And the fascinating thing, actually, this is a 2.5-inch screen. That's about a 1.5-inch screen, both full color. And this little guy here actually has bigger numbers for the locomotives, which is the thing you really want to see on the screen most of the time. Most of the time, you're actually not looking at the screen anyway. So this guy is actually designed for single-handed operation, and it's a pretty friendly little throttle. This guy actually knows when dark, it went in its power save mode, and that's fully adjustable. In the setup screen, you can modify that. So let's take this guy out of the cradle here. We can unplug the power and unplug the network. And now this little bad boy is fully duplex. So we can select circle locomotive 4, loco, and now we're running loco number 4. We don't obviously have it on the layout here, but we could obviously. So this is really designed for single-handed operation, and we have access to all the functions single-handed, and it's a pretty cool little throttle. We added switch control to it, so you can do it turnouts with it. We did not put in programming because that's a request that people made about the UT4. It was driven by users and they don't want the complexity. This is just an engineer's throttle. It's not a hostile throttle.
And you can turn off the switch mode.
And yeah, and the switch
So
mode here.
operators can turn that off.
Yeah, so as a layout owner, you can actually disable. We can go to hamburger 3.3 and we can go down and we can go to the setup here and we can turn off. We can turn it into basic mode, and in basic mode, you don't have access to turnouts. The button just doesn't activate. So basically, this is just a baby brother to the 602. It's quite handy. It also has, this is a duplex, so we can see with the sign on the back here. And then we take it out. Here is running with a Digitrax rechargeable battery and middle hydride. So basically, it has a 3-pin plug, and it can be charged as long as this is powered up on a dead, without a LocoNet live, it will charge the little metal hydride here. If you don't have a metal hydride battery, you can put 3 AA's in there, and you can use regular AA's, or you can use the, which are pretty cool, the lithium rechargeables with a little USB plug in the side. I tried to find mine earlier. I think somebody ran off with them, but basically that will work pretty well. So it's very efficient on batteries. With the AA batteries, it lasts 20 to 40 hours, depending on usage. And also the screen save mode. So in screen save, the screen stays live and then dims, goes out, just like your phone does. So that's something that you're all used to with your cell phones. So basically, it's all very similar sort of stuff. So this will go to power down. I'll put this back. Here, if I take it off the network, I can actually go in here and I can put it in charge mode. So now it's actually charging, and the flash will be red, indicating that the DC input here, which can be anywhere from about 9 volts to 20 volts DC, will actually start charging the battery. So actually here, we get a red indicator showing that it's charging. And then as soon as I put it on the network, as a wired throttle, it'll go back to regular mode. It'll turn the charging off. Obviously, it'll also stop charging when it gets to full battery. So basically, this is the new throttles. They're easy to IPL, they're easy to update, and there's a lot of future features that we are scheduling over the next couple of years, which these throttles will support, particularly the 602, because it has quite a useful quarter VGA display. The duplex was also a point of upgrade. This is our little RF28. This is the little RF duplex module that goes into basically the UT6D and the DT602D, and converts the standard to a duplex. This is very much smaller than the old RF24. And between two of these, one of these exists in the UR93, which is our duplex host on LocoNet. When one of these talks from a UR93 to a DT602 duplex, the link budget's increased by a power factor of 1,000, or if you want to be technical, 30 dBs. So basically the duplex now has a huge turbocharge in its range, and more importantly, not just range, but it also has 2 antennas on there with space diversity. The 2 little antennas, you can probably see them. There's one on this side, and there's one on this side, and they're orthogonal. They're at 90 degrees. So if one of them is experiencing multipath, which you will get in any sort of structure where you got pipes and ground plane and walls and roofs and stuff, conduit, one will generally have a much better response than the other. So the system automatically tracks the strongest multipath signal. So that gives dramatically improved performance. So we're very happy with the duplex. It's got far greater range and it's far more reliable in the presence of multipath, which kills all 2.4 gigs type signals. So that's kind of the heart of what we've done. And over the next year, 2 years, there's a lot of new products we're working on. Again, these were stalled, unfortunately, from the storm. We had to rebuild the company again, 10 years operations compressed into a year and a half to rejigger everything. But basically, we have a long list of brand new products you'll see over the next 6 to 12 months. And quite a few of those actually will be integrated in some of the features of the 602D. So the 602, even the non-duplex will do it. So basically, there's a lot of future stuff that will be coming from us belatedly. Should have happened a year ago, but whatever, we'll get there eventually. So that's pretty much what I have. I think right now it'd be driven by anybody has any particular questions. We can go over it, or you can contact. I can do a ticket on our website and ask tech support. And if it's a technical issue, if it's really technical, it'll get to me. Most of the other people in our group can answer the questions and give you answers you're helpful. So I guess Zana's back here.
And if you want a phone call back from our tech support guys, all you have to do is put your phone number and when you're available in the ticket, and they will get back with you. So, any questions?
I think we'll hold questions till the end of the program because we're running a little long. Thank you very much. It's very interesting, very informative.
Okay, thank you.
If you'll release your screen share.
We didn't screen share, so you have to unspotlight us. Okay, there you go.
Bruce, can we go back to normal now? We don't want to look. John.
We're spotlighting John now since he's the next speaker.
All right. So John is going to talk to us about DCC layout wiring. So go right on with it, John. You're muted though.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
Before I start that, let me echo something that AJ has said. This is a fantastic throttle. It is now my standard throttle. The only time I use another throttle is when I'm changing CVs or something like that. But this is great. It's in one hand. It's got a knob. It's got a switch to change direction. It's just great. And the increased power for the duplex does work. I didn't have that throttle at the last show we did in November, but I had a 602D and I didn't see that white LED flash once through the whole show. So great throttle. Okay, we're going to talk about, all right, share. Layout wiring, start slideshow. There we go. So we're going to talk about layout wiring, and I'm not really going to tell you anything new. I'm going to talk about what our club and the group of clubs known as the Eastern End Lines have been doing for 20 years. First of all, if you're starting or changing your wiring, forget DC. This is 2021. Wire for DCC. And wire it so that any fault has a minimal effect on the overall layout. In other words, from one power manager, no more than one track in one electrical district. So the KISS principle. This is a diagram that I first used for the Louisville convention in 2008 of how we set up the command station. Now, the only thing I'm interested in here is you come out of the command station and you go into the LNRP. And using LNRPs in various places on the layout will significantly increase your reliability of the layout. So the other thing is we in our clubs never use the command station to power track. Okay, this is the one of interest, the booster. Power into the booster, into a PM42, and then one output of the PM42 to each of the NTRaK tracks. And all our modules have the mountain tracks, so there's 4. If you're using 12 gauge wire with power pole connectors, you can go out about 50 feet in each direction assuming you're powering at the center point. Now, I know that I'm sure some of you are thinking, why an old product like the PM42 when we have solid state power managers? None of the other power managers can you alter the trip current or trip timing in real time. You can do it, but you can't do it in real time. With the PM42, connect Loconet to it, give it an address, and you can change the parameters on the PM42 using JMRI. Okay, and then Loconet going out, that can go to other boosters. It could go to an LRNRP, to the radio receivers, things like that. So that's what we've been using now for more than 20 years and very successfully. This is a picture of one of our units. We have 3 8-amp boosters with PM42s. Now this says a DCS 200. We use the DCS as a 200, the 200 as an 8-amp booster. It's a DCS purely as a spare for our main command station. But what I want to point out to you here is the 4 toggle switches that change track polarity. And what we found is you set them up, you check the polarity between boosters, and if the polarity is reversed, you just flick the toggle switches. No wiring changes, it's easy. The other thing we do with those is coming off a junction module, we'll go down a number of modules to a balloon module or a reversing module. On the balloon module, red becomes blue, yellow becomes green. So to avoid a reversing section on blue, we simply flick the switch in the opposite direction and the polarity of blue becomes the same as the polarity of red. Yellow is the reversing section. So that's what those are, and it saves a lot of time, especially if for some reason the polarity changes when you say shut down one night and you turn it up the next morning. So that's how we do NRail. Okay, I haven't covered auto reversers because they're unique and it depends on the layout configuration. Let's go to ZoomTRAK. I don't know if Steve Jackson is on the call, but I stole this diagram from him several years ago. With ZoomTRAK, you can have 2 track buses or 1 track bus. If you're going to run 1 track with DCC and the other with DC, you've got to have 2. In the 12 years or so that we've been using ZoomTRAK, only once have we ever used DC, and that's when our layout was in the Cato booth at a World's Greatest Hobby on Tour show. So we have one bus, and then we have the bus connectors to the module, which are Cato plugs. And this is how we do them. I don't know where the yellow lines came from, but if we're going to one module, we use the connector on the right and the 2 connectors in there wired in reverse. So you get a red and a yellow, and you handle the DCC issue of reversing the polarity on the other track. Sometimes we have a number of modules that need it, so we use the connector on the left, which has the Cato 3-way connectors. So that's how we do it in our clubs, guys. It works well, and it's easy to set up, and rarely do we ever have a problem. Questions?
All right, as we said, we'll hold the questions till later. So if you'll release your screen share. All right, if everybody's ready to go, let me get this thing set up. So Bruce, I'm just going to go to screen share here. I have to switch glasses because I got to look at my script and it's a different focal length than the monitor. All right, today I'm going to talk about operations. You know, for many years, when we had our model railroads, we'd get our trains put on the track and watch them go round and round, and we'd run them, and maybe we'd back them up and pull them into the yard and bring another train out, but that was the extent of it. But over the last, say this last 20, 25 years, it's become more and more popular to actually do railroad operations where you have several people come into your layout, and each of them has a job to do, and everybody has their own throttle, and they're running trains and performing tasks like taking a train out to a location, spotting cars, picking up cars, bringing them back, doing work in the yard to build a train, tear down a train, all that sort of stuff. To me, it's a whole lot more interesting. And if you're fortunate enough to have a job where you don't have to move around too much, you can actually sit on a stool and take a little pressure off your legs sometime, and you can have a lot of fun running trains without having to chase it all over the place. So with that, we'll whoops, what's happened here? There we go. We had to get the screen to open. So what I'm going to talk about today, you can look at from two perspectives. One is, how do you handle when you go to an operating session? If you've never been one before, we're going to expose you to it and let you know the things you need to look for and what you need to be prepared and what you need to understand. If you're thinking about designing and building an operation style layout, again, these are things you should be considering and thinking about as you are in the design stage. So you need to be prepared and do your homework. So the first thing let's do, we're going to talk about some general layout information. And I want to apologize to you all right now. With all the COVID going around, I didn't really have the opportunity to go around and get a bunch of pictures to illustrate what we're talking about. So we're just going to have bullets on this thing. It's not the way I normally like to give a presentation, but this is what we've got to work with today. And so that's what I'm doing. So under general layout information, first let's talk about the environment or the theme of a layout. You'll find that when you look at that, one of the things to look at is the location and the style. Is it a prototype railroad, which is mostly true to a real railroad with obviously some compression? There are proto-freelance, which are loosely based on prototype, but there's a little whimsy in them. And then there's a full freelance railroad, which is anything goes. It doesn't have anything to do with anything that's really out there. It's just what makes you happy as the owner of the railroad. It can be based on a planned or proposed railroad that never was built. It can be based on random real things and a bunch of fantasy things, or it can be totally imaginary. But knowing that when you go to an operating session will help you understand what kind of environment you're in. Also, a lot of model railroads that use for operations deal with a time frame. They're in a certain area, certain period. Some of them will have a specific date or a situation, whether it's railroad politics or real politics or weather or a merger or some unique situation at some time that's unique to what that railroad owner wanted to model. Another thing you need to get square is orientation or direction. Some layouts are true. In other words, north is north, south is south, east is east, west is west. Some of them are variable, wherever you are in the layout, to your left is east and to your right is west, or north and south. They'll tell you about this when you get to the layout to operate on it. And in fact, when you go to an operating session, you will usually be sent some information in advance, particularly if it's your first time there, to give you some information that you should read. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So whether it's true dimensions, whether it's variable, whether it's relative, it all depends, and they'll explain that to you. Let's see, let me do this. Sorry, let's talk about equipment. One of the things I find a lot of people do the first time they come to an operating session is they bring their own trains. Don't do that. in an operations railroad, the operator will have all the trains. They'll be designed and sized for what the load they need. They'll be for the radius of the curves that they need in their railroad. You just need to show up mainly, and I'll talk about a little more about what you can bring, but they'll provide the rolling stock, the locomotives, the throttles, the radios, the paperwork, and usually they'll also provide drinks and maybe sometimes some snacks if you behave yourself. The things you provide: wear some comfortable shoes that you can, so you don't get uncomfortable standing for a while. If you're like me and you got to have reading glasses, bring them, because you're going to need those. And we'll talk about reading glasses and being able to see things in N scale a little bit later. Some people like to bring a full apron or a waist apron that has pockets where you can put your throttle in your pocket, or radio, or waybill card and stuff like that, again, which we'll talk about later. A pen or a pencil. Some people have their own favorite uncoupling tool that they like to use, they're comfortable with. And some people like to bring cameras, and most places welcome them, but you should always check with the layout owner before you try shooting pictures. Always ask. It's just a polite thing to do. Some will say they're happy to have you do it, but they don't want you doing it actually during the operating session because it can interfere with operations. But again, they'll tell you what's okay. The other thing, when you start talking about, let's see, let me go here to this next slide. Let's talk about the cars. Before we do that, let me go back one. You got to find out how you're going to get cars from here to there. And there are three ways to do it. One is waybills, one is car cards, and one is switch list. And this is one of those things, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a picture prepared for you of what those are. But a switch list essentially is a list of things, cars that need to go from, that are on your train and where they're going and where you're supposed to drop them off. There'll be a list of cars you're supposed to pick up, where they are at this present time and where you're supposed to take them. And sometimes that is on a switch list, just a piece of paper. Sometimes it's on a little card that there's a stack of them, one card for each car that tells you what to do with that car. And sometimes they're on another form called a waybill. And we'll see more of that, and maybe we get into that in another session at another time. Communications, depending on the size of the layout, depends on what's necessary. Sometimes there are radios in the larger layouts. Sometimes there are telephones where if you've got a dispatcher who is remotely located where you can't see him. And sometimes it's just shouting across the room to the next guy, telling him what you want to do. As I said, there are usually several jobs going on, sometimes several simultaneously, and sometimes there are a series of jobs as well as simultaneous jobs that will be available. Some are single person jobs, some are two persons, where you have an engineer and a conductor. One is running the throttle and one is doing the coupling and the uncoupling and barking out the orders. Sometimes there's a job assignment that will last the entire session, particularly when usually that's what the yard jobs are. And then there are some floating job assignments where you'll handle one train, and when that's done, you may run a through train or you may give another job something else. And it varies from layout to layout what they are. But again, you will get some of this information before the show starts, so you will be prepared to make these decisions. The yard jobs, there can be a single person, there can be a yard master, a drill guy who works with the incoming trains, a trim guy who works in building the outgoing trains, a hostler who brings engines to and from the engine shop to set up the trains. There are road jobs. Some are point to point. There are through trains where you pick it up at one place and go to the next place. It's from one yard maybe to another yard, no stops. Some you have to stop at certain places and do a block swap where you're going to drop off 10 cars and pick up 10 cars. Sometimes you have switching operations to spot and pull specific cars. There are local jobs where you head out from the yard to a destination, do your work, you run around the train and you come back. There's another job called dispatcher. The dispatcher is a unique job, and it's a job usually for an experienced person. I don't suggest you try this your first time out. The dispatcher controls mainline switching, controls traffic. So if you got oncoming trains, he or she will divert to the siding of the mains. And by the way, I try not to be sexist. If I say he, I mean he or she, because we do have a lot of ladies that are involved in model railroading, and we encourage them to be there. Yes, Zana, you and many others. So if I just say he, I apologize in advance for doing that. Dispatcher will also grant track and time on the main line. If you're doing some switching and you need to get on the main, you don't want to just jump out there in front of other trains going through. So you have to contact dispatch and get approval. And sometimes that will mean they will give you instructions and turn over control of some of the turnouts where you can do your work. We've talked about general information on where you are, and that is important to know. You will get a chance when you first get there to walk around the layout and get a general idea of where things are. There will usually be a layout diagram that you can refer to. We talked about direction, north, east, south, and west, which way you're going, whether that's important or not. There's a thing called click charts, which is car location identity code. And again, I don't have a picture of that to show you, but what it does, it'll give you an industrial area, and it'll let you know where the tracks are. It'll be a track diagram that'll have the tracks, where the industries are. So when you've got a card that says spot this at Jones Brothers junkyard, you'll know where Jones Brothers junkyard, which track it is. Or they may say you put this on track 4B, and that click chart will show you where 4B is, and you can then know what switches you got to throw to get to that place.
Okay.
Some use them, some don't, but it's just one of the things you need to be aware of. All right, then let's talk about layout operations, the actual operations. First of all, there are through train operations. And as we've talked about that, where you may have a block swap at a yard or at a siding, you may have to, if you're traffic on the main line, you may have to talk to dispatch to get permission to proceed, particularly if some layouts are nicer that have CTC control on them. You may be given clearance for the next red light, where you'll have to stop and contact dispatch, or you'll say proceed as per the signals. If you got a green light, you can go on. If you got a yellow light, it means your next one's going to be red. You got to start slowing down. If you got a red light, that means don't blow through it. Stop the train. Yard operations. Let's go, baby. Come on. There we go. In the yard operation, there are departures where you have to build departing trains in advance of the scheduled departure. You may have to block those by destination or priority. Some people want you to put all the reefers at the front because they need to be handled first, particularly if it's an older area where you have ice reefers. You also, as the yard trim guy who will be doing the departures, you have to be aware of the maximum length of the train, how many cars, how many feet, and that will be told you at the start. So they need to know that your train will fit into a siding if it has to. And you may or may not have to assign and attach a caboose and the motive power. It may be done for you and it may not. So, but these are the things that could be involved in, whoops, let me back up. I'm going too far. Previous. Okay, on the arrival part, you're going to, in the yard, you may be breaking down the arrival trains. You will have to take those cars and classify them in the yard. You'll have to stow the motive power and stow the caboose. In switching, sometimes in the yard area, there'll be adjacent industries, or there'll be in-yard moves to team tracks, clean out tracks, rip tracks, to the icing facility for reefers, cars to go to the freight house, stock pens, empty car storage and retrieval, trailer and seat and container loading and offloading. There may be cars, yard supplies to the engine house, fuel, sand, so forth. A variety of things that have to be done in the yard. Local switching operations. When you get to work on these things, you need to study the area when you get there. If you're going to work in a certain area, the first thing you want to do, locate the runarounds, because you're probably going to have some leading point turnouts, and you're going to have some trailing points, and you've got to have your engine on the proper side of the cars you're going to spot. So you need to plan in advance and start thinking about what you're going to do. Be aware of the space that's available on tracks. You can very easily get yourself boxed up where you can't get out and you can't get anything done. You need to maybe, depending on the layout, you may have to get permission from dispatch to use across the main line. There are a variety of other separate types of uncoupling tools, from a toothpick to magnets to fancy little things with a spade point on them. There are a variety of things. Some people have their favorites to bring with them, but there will always be some type of a coupling and uncoupling tool provided. Some of them will have the magnets underneath that you can use. When you spot and set out, sometimes you'll be told to be sure you align the train, the car's doors to the industry's doors. And if you've got to move a car out of the way to get to the one you want, you got to remember where it was so you can put it back there when you get through doing the work in that on that siding. Sometimes you'll find you got to spot a car and there's no place to spot it. All the spots are full, and you'll have to figure out a place that's out of the way to set it, and then make a note for the next operator in the next session to know that that car wasn't able to get spotted because there wasn't room. There are some things that are unique to N-scale that you should be aware of. Now, this applies not only to those operators, but it's something if you're talking about building or your own layout that you need to be clearly aware of. And I'll say right now, put an ad, next month's first layout layout tour is an N-scale layout. And one of the things you'll see is you'll see firsthand are the way he works to help you get the cars where they need to be. We'll talk about these. Truck mounted versus body mounted couplers. In HO scale and others, most of the cars are truck mounted anymore. Are body mounted. So pushing is not as big a deal. With N scale, a lot of our cars are truck mounted. Most of us who do this have found a lot of people really like micro trains couplers, and most of those are truck mounted, although now they're starting to provide more and more body mounted couplers. Body mounted are easier to push. Truck mounted are a little difficult to push. The key thing is you need to have them heavy enough, and the NMRA standards are not enough. You need to add at least another 25% weight to what the NMRA standards are. The NMRA standard for a 40-foot boxcar is 0.95 ounces. I put 1.25 ounces in them. Trying to identify a car in N-scale is difficult. Tiny road numbers are hard to read. Even with cheaters, sometimes they're hard to read. Alternatives, sometimes you'll find they'll tell you, you can look at the Herald to find what road name it is. That's big and easy to find. Car color, sometimes if you have car cards, there'll be a picture. The fellow that's going to talk to us next week in the layout has color-coded roof riders, where he puts a little tab up on the roof of the car, and that'll tell you where it's supposed to be going. You just set those on there with the color code. Underweight cars may be difficult to uncouple and may derail, and you've got to be careful about that. Again, that's where added weight helps. And so when you do have to push, go extremely slowly. Keep the string as short as possible, and you should do all right. Now I'm running through this pretty quickly because we're running short on time. So we'll talk about more of this later, but I apologize for going so fast, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Let's talk about etiquette. First of all, remember that you are a guest in someone's home or at their layout. And you remember that this is essentially role play. You're an employee of a railroad or industry. Matter of fact, we have one layout here in Tulsa where part of the job is he gives you a personality. There are 4 different railroads there. It's designed in Kansas City. And there are 4 different railroads, and each has its own personality, corporate personality. Some guys, you're supposed to be pardon my French, but you'd be a prick, and in other places you'll be the nicest guy in the world. And that's the role you're supposed to play. Somebody, will you move this car for me? No, hell no, I won't. The other guy says, oh, I'll be glad to. So it makes it kind of fun, putting these type of things into. The length of session generally is 2 to 3 hours in a lot of places. That's about all the longer some people can sit. But in some places, in parts of the country, or on some layouts, they're 4 to 6 hours, and they'll take a meal break in the middle and go on back. So you don't know what you're going to find out until you know more about the specific layout you're going to. You should, wait a minute, where did I go? Am I going too fast here? I'm still in the wrong spot here. Okay. If you sign up to be in an operating session, show up. A lot of these layouts have specific jobs that have to be done, and other things happening later in the session require that to be done. And if you're not there to do the job you need to do, everything falls apart. So don't be a no-show. Wash your hands before arrival. Greasy fingerprints aren't appreciated. A lot of people weather their stuff with chalks. You don't want to get your fingers on them and mess that up if you can avoid it. Avoid loose sleeves and dangling jewelry that may snag or catch things on the layout. So think about that. You should arrive 15 to 30 minutes prior to the start of the operating session, where you can read the pre-sent literature. You should read the pre-sent literature that they've given you. This will give you time to walk through and look at the layout, orient yourself, and it'll give you a chance to see, get an idea of the jobs that are available, and you might have figure out what you have a preference for. You will get an orientation by the layout owner. Listen closely. There will be layout policies, procedures, and practices. They may set speed limits, whether you use a caboose or not, and when to and when not to. They'll explain the signaling on the operator's layout, communications that you will be using. He'll explain the routing, whether you use car cards, waybills, or switch lists, and how to read them and how to use them. And he may have written instructions. The key thing is, it's okay to ask questions. Ask them. You don't want to assume things and assume the wrong thing. People like to talk about the railroads and like to tell you about them. So you won't hurt anybody's feelings by asking them. They will tell you whether or not food and drink is allowed in the layout area. Sometimes they'll say there are cup holders, but don't get it up over on top of where the layout is. Keep it in the aisle. Avoid touching rolling stock and scenery as much as possible. They're delicate things, they can break, and the owner has put a lot of effort into building that thing, and you should respect that. Don't put your throttles, radios, papers, and stuff on the layout itself. When you get down to job selection, if you're a novice, let the layout owner know that, because there's things they can do to help you along. They'll get a job commensurate with your experience. They'll try to get that done for you. They may pair you with a more seasoned operator. Sometimes jobs are assigned based on the luck of the draw. Some people draw numbers and then choose jobs in the order of your numbers. Some draw jobs, some pick by seniority. If you've been there before, they don't want you to get stuck with a job you've already done, so you get to pick something different. Sometimes it's first come, first served. It varies depending on the operator, and you as an operator, when you have your own, will have to think about that. You may have, as I mentioned earlier, you may just have one job that lasts the whole thing. You may have multiple jobs. You may have the first one, and then when it's done, you'll be given another one. Sometimes there are times that are allowed for jobs. If job Y may be contingent on the full or partial completion of job X. And if a critical job runs too long, it can throw the whole timing off. So it's not to put pressure on you, but you got to remember this should be fun and not stressful. So pick your assignments accordingly. You may want an easy job, you may not want a tough one, and you just need to tell them that. If you're on the pick and say, I just can't handle this, they'll work with you. They'll try to help you because they want the owner and the people in charge of the operations want the thing to go smoothly so everyone has the best time they possibly can. Conversation banter is good so long as it doesn't distract you from doing your job in a timely manner. Bruce and I were at an operating session one time, and we had one guy who loved to talk, and we had to learn not to talk to him because he couldn't talk and operate at the same time. We were all done. He was only halfway done. And so we learned, don't talk to this guy, but because he'll get his job done, and then we're good because we all wanted to go eat. And after all, that was the most important thing. The other thing to remember, besides being fun, is take breaks, stay hydrated. And again, the operating session should be fun, not stressful. That's about all I have to say on that. Let me stop sharing this. And let's see. Let me bring this back up to you guys. And with that, we are ready to, let me first do this. Bruce, you want to get your...
We won't do the poll today.
Pardon me?
We won't be doing the poll today. We've got a
Nope.
new version that we instituted for NRail, and it turns out that Zoom has made some changes again, and you have to enable polls before you start the meeting. So
Okay.
next time.
Okay, so we'll do that next. So we're at the point now where, Bruce, we need to go back to everybody's pictures so we don't have.
We're there.
We're there? I've got a big picture of you.
That's because you're in speaker view
I am? Okay, I want to go back to gallery.
as
view.
opposed to gallery, right?
Yeah,
If you
because
go
I
back
don't want to just see you.
here it is.
All right, so if you have a question, you now can individually unmute on the bottom far left of your screen. You'll see a microphone and you can click on that and you can talk if you like, but let's take turns. And also there is the chat. Now we have 11 notices on chat, but there's none of them that are specific to questions. So if you have questions, now's the time. Go ahead and do it. Well, that was easy, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah, by the
Well,
way, just to mention, somebody asked about recordings and what we do record these. Bill Egger usually goes through and polishes them up, and then we post them on our YouTube channel. So you'll get a notice when the next one is available. Also, our next, Steve, do you have
yes.
the agenda for next?
Our March
Meeting.
meeting will be on March the 13th. We'll have 4 topics. The first is a short topic called Enhanced Terrain with Paper Mache, and it'll be Chuck Peterson, who's given us some great presentations already. He gave us the rock presentation and the tree presentation. George Johnson will be on, who is the head of N-Scale Enthusiast, and he'll be on to talk about the NSE a little bit. George is always just worth listening to just because he's such a character. You don't want to miss talking to George. The third is a layout tour. Dean Ferris of Decatur, Texas, which is northwest of Fort Worth, will be talking about his Oregon Joint Line Railroad. And then our main topic is unique T-track modules, and that's Kent Smiley of North Virginia NTRAK will be doing a presentation on that. I'll also tell you that in April, we will have a short topic, which is the NRail YouTube channel. We're going to talk about video publishing to help you learn how to put things, your railroad stuff, onto YouTube. Railsmith Models, Lowell Smith will be doing a vendor presentation on what he has to offer. A layout tour will be Ali Sharia out of St. Louis, who has a T-Track home layout. And then our main topic will be an intro to JMRI by Steve Steinecker, who is on our consulting. He's a consultant to the NRail Board of Directors. Again, we have a couple of openings in May and June and on for our 10-minute short topic. If anybody has a topic that they are willing to present, we are open for it and we'd like to hear from you. So with that, I want to thank everyone for attending this month's meeting. Particularly want to thank our presenters. They were very good and we enjoyed it, and we came in and we're only 10 minutes over our time.
Hey,
which is
Steve?
also pretty good. Bruce?
Yeah, the question just came in. What is the basis for 25% over NMRA weight? What was the testing?
It was several years of experience trying different things. You don't want to get it too heavy or it becomes too big a load for the engines. But if it's not heavy enough, you just have to look at the cars. For example, if you've got a 35-foot hopper, with those little hoppers, those things needs to weight, and a caboose needs weight. If you're trying to push down on a coupler to spin it to uncouple thing, you don't want the back set of wheels, the back truck to raise up off of the track. So it's an experimentation as much as anything else. I've got over 2,000 cars that go on and off my layout. And I found that these things work for me, about a 25% excess. The NMRA standard is a half an ounce plus 0.15 ounces per inch of model. So if you've got a 40-foot box car, that's 3 inches. So that's 0.15 times 3 is 0.45 plus the half ounce. So that's 0.95 ounces that a car should be. And if you add 25% of that, you're up to about 1.2 ounces.
Steve, how does that compare with Jim Fitzgerald's chart that he put out a number of years ago?
I don't know. I haven't seen Jim's old chart.
Okay.
Sometimes when working in N scale, it's easier to work in grams rather than ounces.
7 ounces is a gram.
Yep.
7 grams is a quarter ounce.
Yep.
And what I do is I go over to the auto parts store and I get tape weights, and they come in quarter ounce. They snap off and they got sticky on the back of them, and they're real easy to place in a car. They work really well. But again, you only get to a quarter. You got quarter ounce increments. But I can take those and cut them in half with a pair of dikes, and I can put a half of those, say, in a container. It weights the container.
Another alternative is use roof flashing, which is lead, and then you just cut that into strips, and you can get.
Everybody's got their favorite.
Yep.
Depleted uranium is supposed to be good.
Yeah,
What'd you say, Bob?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, back in 1975, I was a member of an N-scale modular group, and we did operations in 1975 and the 80s using car cards. And also I had my module was a 2x6-foot one that had a complicated industrial area that was a slightly easier time saver. And we would set it up at Pacific Coast Region conventions, and I would hand the car cards to HO modelers and say, this is your train, you have to switch this. And they'd say, well, this will never work, it's N scale. But I would cut KD microtrains couplers, that's how old I am. Anyway, I'd cut microtrains uncoupling magnets in half. And I actually think that the centering springs on the microtrains couplers were a little softer back then and even worked a little better. But one thing's, we only use the magnets and the couplers. And the other thing is that we use the restraining springs on the cars so they wouldn't bounce off of each other when we couple and uncouple. And now that I'm 72 years old, I have a tremor. And so the magnets are more important than ever than trying to stick a stick down in there. But I want to say, Steve, your presentation on operating, I think was absolutely fantastic. I think everybody should take it seriously and try something different than just roundy round. I set up my layout so I can run trains continuously too, because I like to see them go. But operation keeps you from getting bored of building a spaghetti nest.
Yep. Well,
Thank you very much, Tom. I will put in an ad. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Tulsa and Kansas City are both known to have fantastic operational layouts all over the place. We have about 15 of them here, and 4 of them are N scale, and they're all operations oriented. We have a layout design and operating symposium here every other year on even numbered years. We obviously missed it in 2000, but we have these every 2 years, and we'll keep an eye out for that in the spring of 2022. Maybe you can make it to Tulsa and get a chance to operate on some of our great layouts. And if those aren't available, mine is. So
yeah, that would be great. Dave Solomon, when he used to live in the Bay Area, I used to operate on his layout. And one time it was on my birthday, and he called us in and had a birthday cake for me. So that was a hot operating session.
well, he's got a real nice one here.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen it
And it's way upstairs, up a steep set of such stairs. That's
yeah,
the only
I've seen
thing.
it in the magazine.
Well,
Hey,
Steve,
guys,
Steve,
before we go, I noticed that we have an attendee from Bournemouth in the United Kingdom. So Bernie, welcome. Hope you'll join us again.
Oh, hi guys. Yes, I certainly will. It's been an interesting evening. Thank you very much. Hopefully Zana and AJ are still with us.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, that's good, because I'd like to give a shout out to them. I bought a 602 throttle earlier this year and made a stupid mistake putting the 3 AA batteries in the wrong way round, and I totaled it. Completely dead. I sent it back and got a brand new one in return. So, yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and thank you, Zana and AJ. Also, Zana and AJ, I did meet you many years ago at a certain model railway in Bournemouth, McKinley Railway.
Okay, and I noticed we also have our usual Canadian guys on, so.
Well,
Yeah, so
again,
I wonder, is there anyone else any
Like-
further away than I am?
I don't think so.
Do I get a prize?
No.
I've been accused of being out of touch.
oh, well, you got somebody from Switzerland?
Yeah, it's Alexander. Hi.
Do we?
Anyway,
all right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for attending. It looks like, did we break 100 today, Bruce? Or did we
no,
just-
we did not. We were in the high 90s, about 97, I think. John, is that what you saw?
Yeah, 97 or 96.
I want you all to know that this is the first time we bought some new software from the Zoom people. The old software was limited to 100, and we were pushing that. So we really were hoping we get over that today, but maybe next month. If you enjoyed this, we would appreciate your letting other people know in your area about our program. Remember that you have to be a member of NRail in order to get the link to get on this thing. We hope you respect that and do not share it with people who are not members of NRail. It only costs $10 a year to join, as you all probably know, not a major expenditure, and we hope you're getting value for your investment. So with that, keep an eye on our website for new things to come along. We're going to improve the postings on the ZoomTRAK meetings coming up, so you'll be easier aware of what's coming and when it is. And we hope to see you again next month. Thank you all very much and have a good weekend. And if you check the news, there's a lot of interesting things. The Senate has finished their deliberations. I won't say anything more. So
Okay.
goodbye, everyone.
Stay safe, y'all.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dana.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Good job, Razor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.